I'd like to read a few words written by Krishnamurti, because he really describes so beautifully the experience of Nibbana. And it's very hard to find language for this. And Krishnamurti is one of the people that has such beautiful language, and he managed with language to get close to describing Nirvana. In this quote he said, that morning the sea was like a lake or an enormous river without a ripple, and so calm that you could see the reflections of the stars so early in the morning. The dawn had not yet come, and the stars and the distant lights were there on the water. As I watched, a great stillness came into me. The brain itself became very quiet, without any reaction, without a movement. And it was strange to feel this immense stillness. Feel isn't a word. The quality of that silence, that stillness, is not felt by the brain. It is beyond the brain. The brain can conceive, formulate, or make a design for the future. But this stillness is beyond its range, beyond all imagination, beyond all desire. I am so still that my body becomes completely part of the earth, part of everything that is still. I wonder if we can imagine something so different from our usual experience. For example, can we imagine that the world is looking out of our eyes right now? We are not looking at the world. The world is looking out of our eyes. Can we imagine this great silence that he's talking about? Can we imagine no differences? The mind is usually making differences between me and the other, between this person and another person, between this table and the floor. Can we imagine a world in which we see just like anybody else, but there is no difference? Can we imagine a world in which everything is connected in a sea of love? Sea of love. And that's where we are. Can we imagine that every experience that we experience comes out of, if you like, a womb, rechem? And can we imagine what it is to be the rechem, the womb, and not the experience that is born, like the baby, from the womb? We go back into the birth of experience, the source of experience. Can we imagine? Very hard to bring all this into language. And all we have in words is language and concepts. And so we're faced with a huge problem, which is to talk about something which is fundamentally indescribable. Indescribable. It's like, how can the baby that comes out of the womb describe the womb? I mean, where it came from. We are faced with this problem, and what we have is, in language and in thought, are pointers. We can say, this is the direction, these words give us a direction. This is the direction, and this is what Krishnamurti is doing here. He gives us a sense of direction. This is the way to go. This is the direction of experiences. This is the quality that is embodied in Nibbana. And so because it's beyond concept, it's not in experience, it's in the source of experience. So in a way, it's closer to say not knowing. Iyadiya is closer to it than Yadiya, knowing. Concepts can take us away from it. So, but you still have to use concepts in language. So you're always faced with the problem of talking about the beyond with a language from the here and now, samsara. But if we can imagine also a world of the not knowing, the iyadiya, the beyond ourselves, it's the direction. Nevertheless, I just want to emphasize that the Buddha talked about awakening as a truth. It's the third noble truth. He didn't say there's a truth of suffering or isipuk, dissatisfaction. There's a truth of the reason for it, the attachment, the closure, the imprisonment of the habits of our attachments. And then there's the fourth truth, which is the way, the Eightfold Path. And the third truth of enlightenment is only for the few, and forget it. No, he said, there are four truths, and one of them is awakening. It's a truth. It's not an inachievable kind of impossible place to be. Unless you're a Buddha or you've had 1,000 lifetimes, you can't get there. No, it's a truth. Meaning, it's part of what's possible being born as a human being. Part of what's possible. It's not impossible. So it's important to remember that it's one of the truths. Truth of suffering, but the truth of awakening. And therefore it's embodied in reality in some way. As we are embodied, it's embodied with us. So Nibbana is a metaphor, like every word that we use to describe awakening is a metaphor, is a picture. It's not itself awakening, it is a pointer to awakening. Nibbana, as Frauoffer said, or nirvana in Sanskrit, in my understanding, its meaning is closer to cooling down. It means cooling down, cooling the fires. And it's kind of in reflection to the fact that the Buddha described life, samsara, desire, need, liking, not liking, as a kind of a fire. In the Fire Sermon, which is one of his greatest suttas, greatest sermons, texts, in which, according to tradition, 1,000 people reached awakening just by hearing this sermon. He said, everything is burning, burning. The eyes are burning, the ears are burning, the taste is, the senses are burning, because they are leading us to isheket, to activity, to constantly wanting, to constantly needing, to constantly doing, to constantly repairing, to finding, to being, to needing, to running, just to stand still. And he described the human situation as being on fire. And Nibbana, the metaphor, the picture of Nibbana as cooling the fire, as cooling down, as quietening down, as stillness, has a non-attachment or non-feeding. Kol boel, say in Hebrew, kol boel is burning. The planet is burning, by the way. So we just can't stop burning up. It's just by living, we're burning. But what's interesting in the Eastern view of fire is that fire, when you put out a fire, it goes back into the universe. So say you have a fire, Madura, it burns on wood. And it burns, and it's very active and very hot until the wood is all burnt up, and then the fire disappears. According to the view of the more Eastern view, fire is an element of the universe. When the fire is put out, it just returns to its home. It doesn't disappear. It goes home. And when it's collected together in a kazer mudura, it's just, overactive, burning, collected together, hot, busy, and then it can use up all the fuel, all the wood, all the fuel is all the kolodelic kvar israf. האש יכול לחזור הביתה שקר ליקום, to the universe. So it's a nice model of nirvana, of awakening, a sense of returning home to a place of deep rest, deep stillness, and deep non-differentiation, where everything is connected. The fire returns to the universe, becomes connected again, not just collected in one place and hot. As a concept, Nibbana can really mess with our mind. It can really create a lot of problems. It's not easy. Because we have it as a concept of beyond, all we can do with this is use our usual mind for thinking about the beyond. And our usual mind gives us problems. And so I just want to raise some of the problems that come up when we talk about or think about awakening in language or in concept. Hamsaka. First, what happens, and this is quite traditional, and maybe we'll have a dialogue with the offer when he's back about this. But one of the things that tends to happen is we tend to make it beyond. We tend to make it so far away and so impossible. We tend to put it right up there in the realm of the gods. And the tradition does it. And then the tradition says you can't transform, you can't awaken unless you've gone through thousands of lifetimes of awakening. So there's a tendency there to sort of put it up into the realm of the angels, right up, far unreachable place. And then a sense of duality. I'm suffering here, life is hard, life is chara. And I'm stuck here for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, like in the like a kind of ogea, a hamster going around the wheel. That's life, samsara wheel. And it's an impossible achievement, just the Buddha. But we also tend to do the opposite. We tend to make it small. We have to be careful of that as well. In the world of concept, we tend to make it small. I had a great experience, Nibbana. I was in bliss, I was in ecstasy, I took a pill and found Nirvana. And reducing it to something like feeling good, feeling even ecstasy, feeling joy, feeling together, feeling belonging. And so that's another thing that tends to happen as a concept. We reduce it. So we can send it beyond, or we can bring it into, make it smaller. That's another issue. A third kind of problem is we tend to materialize it. Materialize it, make it something. It's like we make it into a god. Even if we think we know the word Nibbana, the moment we think, Nibbana is something, which most of us do feel, because it's a word that's in the language and everybody even knows it. The minute we say we know it, we lost it. It's become a thing. So that's another, and that's all the creation of gods. The creation of Buddha as worship, the creation of Nirvana as a sort of an angel or a god place. So, and that makes it into a thing, and it's not a thing. Another problem that when we talk about this in language is we tend to, as language comes from the self, it comes from the me. My brain is making language and words, so we tend to want to own Nirvana. We tend, this netiya, al-ba'alut al-Nirvana, means it's me that does it. I am the one that's enlightened. It belongs to Ilu after many, many, many years of practice and practice. I will be enlightened. Who says that I is enlightened? It can be enlightened. It can be Nibbana. Nibbana belongs to somebody. It belongs to anybody. It's not owned by, I can't pull it out of my pocket. I have Nibbana, I've done it. I got there. It's me that got there. So that's another issue. The sense, the habit of ownership, the habit of being somebody, and therefore thinking that Nibbana is something that I can have, or I can be. And one more problem I just want to mention is the sense that it gets mixed with the ego in many different complicated ways. One of the ways that we can I think all of us are touched by it, is the sense of grasping. We want Nibbana. We want it. It's something that we want to have, to get to. This is not a bad thing. I'm not trying to put it down. Longing, or kmiha, is a beautiful movement of the soul. It's really, the Buddha said, the best desire of all desires is desire for awakening. It's not that you shouldn't artificially not desire. Let it work inside us. This longing for release, this longing for freedom is a message inside us. It's really okay. It's like freedom inside us is longing for freedom. The freedom here is longing for the freedom everywhere. So it's something which is like the nirvana in us, or the freedom in us is talking. And then we feel longing coming out. In the end we can let go of it. But just to be aware that the ego does work with this as a kind of a subject, and all kinds of grasping and projections and so on. So, I don't want to really, this is not the time to talk too much about the ways towards it, the Four Truths. There just isn't the time, or to really describe all the different ways and the process. It's a huge subject. You need to kind of really go into it. But I would say, in a way, there's two broad pathways. Okay, two grand highways, shall we say, to awakening. The first is really to, in some way or other, touch the freedom inside us. It's like saying, what is it that I really am? What is it behind this self? What is the womb that gave birth to the baby called my experience, my thought, myself? So what is it that I really am is a kind of direct path, if you like, to awakening, and it's embodied in some of the Tibetan practices of Dzogchen. It's part of Advaita, the non-dual teaching of coming out of the Hindu tradition. It's more the direction of Zen, right? And so it's more like it's more like coming down to the top of the mountain rather than climbing up from the bottom. Then there is another broad path which is climbing up from the bottom, and it's really saying, let go of what I am not. It's not what I really am, but letting go of all the things that I really am not. And this is more classical Buddhist teaching about non-grasping. And the Buddha said, there is absolutely nothing worth holding on to. Nothing. Nothing that you can think of is worth grasping. So that means keep on dropping what we are not. I'm not this, I'm not my desires, I'm not my needs, I'm not my body, I'm not my self, my ego, I'm not my the skandhas, the aggregates, I'm not my perceptions, I'm not my history or my biography or my story, I'm not my consciousness. I'm not really that. There's something else. So it's a process of dropping what I am not. It's an interesting. We had an interesting dialogue in the Dharma Teachers, the World Dharma Teachers kind of network of emails going around. We had an interesting dialogue a couple of years ago, when someone said, I think that there's two kinds of Dharma teachers or Dharma practitioners in the world. There's those that are interested in the First Noble Truth, and we'll call them firsters. The firsters. And they're interested really in suffering and in release from suffering. And then there's those that are thirdsters, that are interested in the Third Noble Truth, which is awakening. And that much of the Western Dharma so far has been dominated by the First Noble Truth, which is the nature of suffering and the release from it. And not so much emphasis paid to the Third Noble Truth, which is the truth of awakening, which I mentioned before is a truth. It's not an unattainable, impossible vision. So there's been a tendency, or sometimes there's a tendency, I mean, you never get it right. You can never get it completely right. So sometimes there's a tendency to be too devoted to suffering and forgetting the truth of the nature of awakening, the truth of awakening. So I think we need to balance both, because both have problems. If we want to just be in the First Noble Truth and busy with our suffering and getting out of suffering, we end up with a kind of comfortable samsara. Just be more comfortable, that's great, but it's not it. On the other hand, if we're just busy with awakening, we can get into all kinds of disastrous illusions of some of the ones that I mentioned before. And just in cloud dreamland called my awakening. So it's more like, the image I like is a bit like a moth around a candle. Ash, Shem Stadev, Hanea. So all the time, all our practice, whether we're in the first Noble Truth or the third Noble Truth, we keep moving around the candle. We keep in the territory, hopefully getting closer and closer. And eventually, hopefully, we fall in the candle. We get burnt up. No self. Awakening can't be in the territory of self. It's not the self that awakens. It's like awakening awakens through us. But we just fall in the candle, get burnt up, finished. There we are. Thank you.